need your attention, thank you. We need somebody with a louder voice than mine. I'd like to welcome you all to the Swart-Wilcox house. We are delighted to have such dedicated, cheerful, happy, upbeat people. This has got to be the best audience we've ever had, because you've gone through the most to be here. So thank you one and all. We are delighted. We're going to get right to the program. I have to tell you, that's the fire exit. Or you can go that way, or you can go that way, but that's going to get you out fastest. I'm delighted to introduce Jim Loudon. He really doesn't need any introduction, I'm sure, since most of you know him and he's leaving now. So maybe I do have longer to talk. I don't know. Are you leaving or are you staying?
I'm staying.
Okay. I will now introduce Jim Loudon, a local historian, author. He's written many books. They are available. They were available outside.
We have them set up on the table right in the back.
Okay, that's good. And he is a railroad aficionado, as you all know. He's written a book called The Little Red Caboose, and he's going to tell us today about the Little Red Caboose. And as you can see, he's got a lot of memorabilia. So Jim, it's all yours.
Okay, thanks to everybody for coming. Everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
I don't think I need a microphone. Okay, well, we're going to get into some background on railroading and why there was a need for a union. The conditions for railroad workers in the 1870s were deplorable. Men were paid 90 cents for an 18-hour day. Their back wages were withheld. Union members were blacklisted. The railroads had stopped issuing passes, so men had to pay to get to work. And these conditions were brought on by the Panic of 1873, and that was brought on by over-speculation on the part of railroad barons like Edward Harriman and Cornelius Vanderbilt. And of course, when the bottom fell out, the workers had to pick up the tab. So on top of that, the railroads started charging workers for the shacks that they used along the tracks just to get out of the weather. In 1877, the Erie was charging $25 a year for men that didn't even make $5 a week. So things continued to deteriorate. And in addition to the financial hardships, the work was extremely dangerous. And I will hold these panels up. The brakemen had to scramble along the tops of cars, moving cars, any kind of weather, to set handbrakes. They also had to jump from car to car without falling to below the cars and getting crushed. So that was one of the biggest dangers. And the other was the use of Lincoln pin couplers. And this was quite common up until the 1890s. And I actually brought a visual aid, if I can lift it. I think I can. That's a link, and somewhere in here is a pen. I know, excuse me just a minute. Oh, there it is. Okay, so what would happen, this pin would be put into one of the couplers and would be set at an angle so it was ready to fall into the coupler. And the brake pin would connect this pin into the other coupler, or this link, and pin it, and he would have to hold this in place while signaling for the engineer to bring the locomotive up. And of course, needless to say, a lot of men lost fingers and hands doing that. So it was very dangerous. And things didn't improve right away. The air brakes were invented in 1872, and the knuckle couple in 1873. However, the railroads were not in a hurry to invest the money to make things safer, and it actually didn't improve until the Safety Appliance Act of 1893, when the government forced the railroads to make the changes necessary. So the bad conditions persisted into the 1880s, and at the time there weren't any actual unions. There were some fraternal organizations which basically tried to provide life insurance, but there were no unions with bargaining power. Well, in 1883, a group of 8 railroad workers from the Oneonta, Delaware, and Hudson facility decided it was time for national union. So in June of 1883, they met secretly in this caboose, which had been turned into a work shanty. It was actually located near Glens Bridge Road. And out of that meeting was born the Brotherhood of Railroad Brakemen, officially chartered September 23rd, 1883. And the union grew very rapidly across the nation. By 1885, there were 4,000 members nationwide. In 1888, they added an auxiliary, and in 1890, the name was changed to the Brotherhood of Railroad Trainmen to reflect the very diverse types of trades that were involved. The union had a national convention every year, and a very important convention, the 40th anniversary in 1923, it was held in Oneonta. And Mr. Dodge from the Union headquarters suggested that the founding home, the caboose, should be restored and set up as a national shrine somewhere along the line. And they decided to work with the Delaware and Hudson to facilitate that move. So the caboose was dragged out of wherever it was and brought to the D&H shops, where they embarked on a restoration process. Now, the original site was going to be Huntington Park, but it was later decided to put it in Neahwa Park. And a call went out across the country to get the parts for restoration to all of the lodges, but the best find was in Cobleskill. They found an old car that supplied the Lincoln pin couplers and the wheels. So once it was fully restored, it was moved on track panels. This nice shot is courtesy of Great Oneonta Historical Society.
Hold them up higher.
And they had, sorry. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay. And they had 2 panels and a team, and so they would put the caboose on one panel and pull the other one in and then move it that way. The pergola where the caboose sat was built by the Bridge and Building Division of the Delaware and Hudson. So all of their craftsmen went to work on that. And once it was in place, the dedication was set for September 23rd, 1924. And this is a picture of the caboose at the time of the dedication. And huh?
Show it that way.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, you can see.
And the official dedication took place at 1:30 on September 23rd, 1924. These are all going to be set up out back so you can get a better look at them, by the way. And there were several guest speakers. There was J. Tabor Laurie, who was at the time the vice president of the Delaware and Hudson. William Lee was president of the Brotherhood of Railroad Trainmen, and Lieutenant Governor Lund, and the mayor at the time, Oneonta mayor, was W. Irving Bolton. So they all did speeches, and the official christening was done, since the country was in the midst of Prohibition. The christening was done by little Marguerite Klein of Oneonta with a bottle of prune juice. So they got away with the christening with no alcohol. Let's see, this is a picture of some of the founders. Left to right, W.C. Gurney, C.G. Woodworth, and Elmer Wessel. Martin Ryan was one of the early lodge members. One thing I forgot is to read the founders. The 8 founders were William Gurney, Daniel Hopkins. The first lodge was named after Daniel Hopkins. Elmer Wessel, H.S. Wilbur, Charles J. Woodworth, Union C. Osterhout, Daniel J. McCarty, and Eugene S. McCarty. And all this information is in my book. After the dedication, the Brotherhood planted a memorial forest, and this map is in my book. There was 8 species of trees, and each species was dedicated to one of the founders. And if you go down in the park, there were 3 trees that are old enough to be survivors: the maple, the sycamore, and the oak. The picture on the cover of my book, it shows the Union Osterhout's red oak when it was a fairly young tree. So the next time you go down, you can spot those trees. I'm sure quite a few of them have been taken down over the years. And this is an image probably from the 50s or 60s. And once the caboose was dedicated, it was a real landmark for Oneonta. And of course, kids like me used to climb on the caboose and dream about trips to faraway places. And Union members from all over the country would make a pilgrimage to contemplate the birthplace of their Brotherhood. So it was really pretty much the centerpiece of Oneonta. It sat peacefully for about 60 years until the 1980s, when unfortunately it fell victim to vandalism. This is me 40 years younger and quite a bit lighter. fixing the door on the caboose. And at that time, there were 2 retired D&H railroaders, Al Ludwig and Tom Rosenfeld, and they had taken on the responsibility of caring for the caboose. They cleaned it, and they kept the area clean around the caboose and took care of the pictures inside. And it was heartbreaking for them to see this start to happen when the caboose was getting vandalized. And at the same time that the vandalism was happening, there were rumors afloat that the Smithsonian Institution had their eyes on the caboose and wanted to take it to Washington, D.C. So it was because of this concern, and the concern of a lot of people in Oneonta, a handful of local rail fans got together in September of 1982 and started with the Stocking Railway Historical Society. There's only 2 of the original members left, me and Bruce Hodges. But at the time that we started, one of our new members was Russ Hawkins, and Russ was the president of the local union. So he confirmed our suspicions about the Smithsonian. And I'm going to read a letter from the Smithsonian curator, John White, to Fred Hardin, president of the UTU. The UTU had absorbed the Brotherhood of Railroad Workers. Dear Mr. Hardin, the future of the BRT caboose continues to trouble me, and I wonder what can be done to ensure the preservation of this valuable national artifact. I can understand the interest of certain citizens of Oneonta in keeping the car, but I wonder if that is the wisest course to follow. The car is partially exposed to the elements of vandalism. It is also surely seen by a very small number of people in such an isolated location. We can offer a climate-controlled building, 24-hour guard service. The National Museum of American History is visited by nearly 5 million persons each year. Would the people of Oneonta be willing to have the original caboose brought here and have a replica of the original car in its place? A replica would be expensive, but it could be done if funding were available. It might also be possible to attach the present bronze plate to a memorial stone placed inside the existing shelter. Perhaps your staff could offer some more imaginative suggestions. Mr. Cullen's enthusiasm for transferring the caboose to our care is very encouraging, and I want to assure you that my interest and concern has not diminished. At the time, the union was complicit with the Smithsonian, unfortunately. And this is a letter from Fred Hardin, president of the BRT, to Russ Hawkins, who is one of our members. Dear Sir and Brother, the attached letter addressed to my office from Mr. John H. White, Jr., the curator of the Transportation Division of the National Museum of American History, should be carefully analyzed and its options thoughtfully considered by the citizens of Oneonta. The future well-being of the Little Red Caboose is of great concern to all of us who seek not only to protect it, but to preserve it by viewing for future generations of Americans. The caboose is part and parcel of our national heritage and deserves its place in our National Museum along with Lindbergh, Spirit of St. Louis, and Fulton Steamboat. I would appreciate your help in seeing that this important piece of U.S. railroad history finds safe harbor in the Smithsonian Institution. The suggested alternatives of the Smithsonian are real and achievable, allowing Oneonta to retain its important place in railroad history and also to preserve the endangered caboose from ravages of weather, vandalism, and exposure. Both the city of Oneonta and the larger public of the United States would be able to share in this piece of history. Neither one of the suggestions that they made were acceptable to Oneonta, so, but that's basically what gave us the impetus to make sure that we saved it. So our initial group, I think there was 5 of us. We were low in number but big in ambition. So right away we says, well, we're going to do 2 things. We're going to keep the caboose in Oneonta and establish a regional railroad museum. This was our proposal, which would include a library on one side, a museum on the other, in the caboose in a glassed-in breezeway, I guess you would call it. And we proposed setting that up in the vacant urban renewal lot. Well, of course, the city said they wanted to save that for commercial developments, which we know didn't happen right away. So that got rejected. So we figured the next best thing is to try to enclose it and protect it where it was. And that's when we came up with this proposal, a safe home for the caboose. And we presented this to the city of Oneonta. It took several months to get the approval. They were mainly concerned about ownership. Well, finally, the union signed off on ownership, so the city okayed it. That would have been in the spring of 1983. Well, once we got the approval, the next thing is to pay for it. Tri-County Glass gave us an estimate of $10,000 to put the enclosure up. So we decided to try doing radiothons. Now, at the time, Bob Whittemore was in charge of the Chamber of Commerce. If anybody remembers Bob, one of the nicest people I ever knew, and he would do anything for Oneonta. So we set up in the train station. That's where the Chamber of Commerce was at the time. And we had 3 radiothons, and we would interview retirees, talk about history. People would call in with questions. And after the first 2 radiothons, we were up to $4,000. And we were getting a little nervous by the time we got to the third. But mid-morning, Gene Badiola called, who has done so much for Oneonta, and he placed $5,000. So with that, we could get to the finish line. Construction started in August of '83. These are a couple of the workers from Tri-County Glass putting up the enclosure. And the official dedication took place on September 6, 1983. This is the stand that they had set up in front of the caboose. And that's Bob Whittemore at the microphone. Like I said, a really great guy. And I don't remember everyone who was there. I know one was Jim Bazan. He was in charge of the IDA. And Bob Whittemore used to say, he had toy trains. He says, I play with little trains, but Jimmy, he plays with big trains. So I always got a kick out of that. Now, while the dedication was going on, the Chamber of Commerce and the JC's Junior Chamber of Commerce got together and decided to have a Red Caboose Festival. The first one would have actually been a year ahead of the anniversary in 1983. And they had a lot of activities. They had train rides that went from Cooperstown Junction to Milford. They had a carnival set up in the vacant urban renewal lot, and they had a nice display of railroad art up at Harvard College at the Yeager Museum. So that was fairly successful, and so we decided by that time our group had gotten pretty close with the Chamber of Commerce to try to plan one in 1983, the actual anniversary. And in addition to what they had done the year before, we had a Railroadiana show that we put on. And being kind of a newly born organization, we says, well, we'll take care of the train rides. So we had no idea what we were getting into. We decided to have round-trip trains to Cobleskill twice a day throughout the weekend. That's a picture of the Red Caboose Special just below Richmondville. And what it involved was negotiating between the Delaware and Hudson for trackage rights and Delaware Otsego Corporation for equipment, and they had those beautiful dome cars at the time. But I'll tell you, negotiating with just one of them would have been enough. And the night before the rides were going to start, we were driving up and down 88 getting contracts signed. So that was pretty interesting. But we did one thing that was smart. We offered paramedics from the fire department to ride free if they would just ride the train just in case. And the last day we had a trainload of seniors, and all of the AC went out. And luckily they had bought chests full of ice bags, so they were running up and down getting people cooled off. So that was a close call, but we survived that one. And in 1984, we held a third one, and that included helicopter rides, and we also did train rides, I think, to Sydney. So I think I've covered everything. Does anybody have any questions? No?
Well, I'd like to say I read his book and I found it fascinating, and it's right in there.
Yeah.
And all of his books are for sale. Yes.
How many people here have been in that caboose before it was?
Jim, you mentioned that the gathering place is trying to organize a Thanksgiving train ride and a Christmas train ride.
Oh, thank you for reminding me.
And anyone who's interested in that, if they just call the gather place and get your name on the list, they have to have 40 people in order to make it feasible. Tickets will be $10 a piece for both rides.
Yeah, we're actually going to do a fall foliage train. That's already set for October 4th, and we get enough people, and then a Christmas train yet to be established. But it's going to be a charter train, which means that just the people in the group will be on the train, and they've talked me into being conductor.
Oh,
so.
yeah.
I bet they had to twist your arm, right?
Yeah, real hard.
And another announcement that's in the works with GOHS and our group, on the 22nd of September, we're going to have a dedication for the 100th anniversary of the dedication of the caboose. We're only going to be off by one day, but we're going to have guest speakers and maybe a recreation of the christening, and so that should be fun.
Fruit juice and all, huh? Fruit juice and all.
Yeah, fruit juice, yeah.
Well, this is the book, And when I was going through it, I was quite interested in this ad on 83, and it said, buy your tickets for a Corvette. So I asked Jim who won. Did you ever find out?
Never found out. Ben Nesbitt is the one in the picture, but I have not found out who won the Corvette.
Oh, wow.
Do any of you know who is driving around town in this Corvette?
Oh, the other thing is, the Chamber of Commerce and the Red Caboose Committee published a really nice booklet, and that is reprinted in full in the back. And it has histories of all the local railroads. It has the efforts of putting the festival together. It's a lot of good information.
It's a fascinating book. Also, just the ads from
Ads.
back then,
Yeah.
if any of you were around in 1980. But it's a great book, and I thank you, Jim,
Oh, my pleasure.
for both writing it and for presenting it to us.
Hey, well, you inspired the book, remember? Because I started digging up information for this talk, and I said, no, wait, there might be enough stuff here for a book. So, and I can't resist this putting a book together.
And you do it so easily.
Yeah, right.
I don't know about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, when you go out there, you'll see the card tables full of them, so they're all available. We also have books that have been donated to us by Tom Morgan. He was a speaker at the beginning of the season, and they're available for $20, and all the donation goes to our barn. Now, I'll just mention our barn. Had it been available, we could have just walked inside the barn and been dry. I just want all my friends who are concerned about the weather
To know
it's not raining yet, ladies.
Didn't I tell you she would
Why don't we set these up so people
I was
give
outvoted.
us the I told you so?
I had you all sitting outside, but oh well. And I would like to ask if everybody has signed in as a guest in our guest book. So make sure you signed in the guest book. Let's see. Lorraine, would you like to take a minute here?
I sure would. I'm treasurer of Swart-Wilcox, and I have a table set up that has all kinds of opportunities to donate for our barn. Out there in the yellow tape, you can see where our barn is going to be $500,000 later. So there's opportunity to put money in the barn, and next week we will be counting the money from the barn to see if we have $1,500 in donations, because we have a person willing to match that $1,500 if we've gotten there. So that'll be exciting next weekend. And Jack, who made the barn, is going to help me do that. So partners in crime.
I'm gonna bring my axe.
Okay, you can't break that barn. Anyway, we have also Debbie
She's inside.
wandering around somewhere, made a beautiful wall hanging of barns, and there's an opportunity to take a chance on the barn, and that will be given out next week as well. So,
I just want to say one thing.
yeah.
Here it comes.
Some of you may know, and most of you may not. Jim here is the founder of the defunct railroad that was no longer operating. And he showed me the grant book that he wrote for the grant. That thick. That thick. I could not believe it. I could hardly lift it. And he said that the first time they submitted the application for the grant with the information, they were told by the state that not enough information.
Yeah.
And he keeps meticulous records. I wish I was that good, but I'm not. After that, he went to the drawing board and he did what he had to do with the same grant. And again, there was some, so Jim said to me that said to Jim Seward, God rest that man's soul, he was marvelous. He said to Jim Seward, I'm gonna sue the state, that money has to come here. And I thought it was for $500,000, but Jim said it was what?
1.1 million.
1.1 million.
So we're just
So we
asking your
only
penis
have
with
that.
500,000.
Right.
So, Jim Stewart said, Jim, and guess what? They got the money.
Well, we had to have a $225,000 match, and
Yeah.
Jim got a special appropriation for that.
Okay.
So the hardest job we had was getting the IDA to sponsor us. We had to have a sponsor, but they finally, thank God they believed in us.
Yeah.
I sent a note to Cindy that that train ride is Jim's lasting hometown legacy.
Yes.
We'll never forget him for
Yeah.
doing
Oh,
that.
God, yes.
Well, you mentioned something that I will just reiterate. It was a small group of 4, you said, or
I think it was 5.
5. And here's Debbie somewhere back there. And we started out with 4 of us that started this whole concept.
Wow.
And the nice thing is, we keep adding people along the way who aren't really one of the first 4, but boy, have they done a yeoman's job.
Well, there's
so.
one of the presidents, he said, it's amazing what you can do with determination. That's what it comes down to, really.
The one I like is, forgive me, never underestimate what a small
Power
group of
of
dedicated
woman.
women can do.
I agree.
Don't take it personally.
No, not at all.
And this is Debbie's quilt, and it's gorgeous, it makes a great wall hang. And the, not raffle, what is it we're doing, the drawing, whatever.
Yeah, it's a raffle.
I think,
It's a raffle.
well,
It's a raffle.
I don't know, I heard one place it's illegal, and I heard another it was, everybody does it, so, whatever.
I noticed that, but I
We're
wasn't gonna say.
offering it available to the winner.
The one who gets drawn will end up with it,
And the drawing is next Sunday on our very last program. So,
What is
tickets
that
in the
for?
kitchen.
which will, I'm sorry,
How much per ticket?
Debbie,
What was that?
how much per ticket?
$5 a ticket, 5 for $20.
5 tickets for 25.
And if you
No,
fill out the
5
first one,
tickets for 50.
I'll fill out the rest.
There you go.
And
They
next,
have those tickets now.
I think so.
Sunday is our last Sunday, and we're praying for good weather, so we'll be outside, and it's going to be Oneonta celebrations. Now, Jim has mentioned a couple here with the Little Red Caboose, but Oneonta celebrations go way back, and Mark Simonson has been collecting them for us, so think of a celebration that you went to. I was here for 1976 when Ed Moore stood on the steps outside and talked about this house as the oldest house in Oneonta, but I'm sure there are many others. So do join us next week. This week, please walk through,
Yeah.
take a tour of the house. We can go upstairs if you'd like, the front room. That used to be the kitchen for any of you who are interested. This was 3 rooms. That was the kitchen. This was the living, family, everything you want room. And that little room where Kate is standing was the master bedroom. And I love pointing that out because there isn't a bed we have that would fit in it. And the kitchen that is in the other side would have been a dirt floor shed. So it would have been potatoes and pumpkins and things you want to hang from the rafters. And that young lady up there, Phoebe Wilcox, moved in as a relatively newlywed. And our story is she stood in the doorway and said, I'm not cooking on a fireplace in 1870. I want a stove. And so he gave her the stove and turned the kitchen into the front parlor. And if you want to know about what he did with the bricks, because it was a whole wall, it was back before the days of the 3 R's, reduce, reuse, recycle. But right over here, he insulated the house with those bricks. And you can see how dirty they are from the smoke, and you can see how uneven they are from the 1807 building materials. So there. Any questions about the house? 2 owners, and then the city bought it, so.
The only thing I can say is when I was volunteering at Fox Hospital, after I retired, my husband wound up there. He could have been in the VA hospital in Oxford, but I would have never seen him driving that hill and the ice and the snow. Conrad Marinas was a volunteer also. And he told us, my friend Rose and I, because both of us had our husbands there, he told us that his mother, Sarepta, was keeping company with the one that
Merchant.
worked at the bank.
Oh, that was
Okay,
Fred.
I get the names mixed
That was
up.
Fred.
And he wanted to marry her. And she had to decline that because she said, I could not live up to taking care of your brother who had had an accident sometime before.
So that was Mert then that she was,
Yeah,
yes,
and
Fred was
the
the one
man
with the
wanted to
accident.
marry Sarepta. He made a note to his mother on her deathbed that he would always take care of the brother.
That's right.
So as the story goes, on Sunday, Mr. Wilcox would dress up on Sunday, and he would drop off vegetables, because she did marry after a while, and he'd drop off vegetables and put them on the porch. I mean, he still loved her, he never married.
Isn't that romantic?
Isn't it?
We also
So
have a
Conrad
postcard
told us that
from
little story.
the turn of the century, 19 something or other, and it's, Mert, please add a dozen eggs to your delivery today. And it went through the US mail, and it was someplace up on River Street. So they had a truck garden that they would truck up and down, and can you imagine mailing something today and having them get it today in Oneonta? Well, do have a chance to look through the house, and thank you all for coming.
And I'll be at the fundraising table.
Yes, we have some bargain books.
Yes, it's wonderful.
Yes, we have some dollar books.
I'll have to take
Out
a
on
picture.
the,
Oh,
we have some,
cookbooks?
we have some dollar books out just coming in the back door, and also some cookie cutters.
Our
Dollar-
gift shop
Gift
is
shop.
at by
Dollar-
the back
dollar
door.
piece.
If anyone wants to review the panels that Jim had showing you here, they're in the kitchen along with his books. And you can kind of look at them again and see the picture a little bit closer.